Web accessibility is basically the idea to build products in the web that work for everybody. When I take myself as an example, I'm a completely able person that can hear everything, that can control websites with a mouse, and that can see everything. This becomes all a little bit harder for people that are maybe blind or cannot hear properly. And web accessibility is basically the idea to build stuff that just works for everybody. And why is it needed? Well, I think the web is a pretty cool place, and everybody should be able to use it. So the state of accessibility today is not perfect yet, but I think we're getting better. When I started entering the web industry, basically not a lot of people cared about web accessibility. But now companies like Google and Microsoft release tools that always include an accessibility score. So how do you build an accessible product today? You have to have a certain knowledge on how to build stuff for the web. But building accessible products very often boils down to using the stuff that the web is built upon anyways. A lot of times people just misuse or make some nasty things with technology to make it look pretty, which then harms accessibility. I 100% believe that making things accessible is definitely not a waste of money and time, because when you start caring about accessible products, you will discover that when your product is accessible, that it will be a better product at the end anyways. And this can start with contrast ratio. For example, a really famous example is that a lot of people today have these really subtle color differentiations that look fancy, but might not be visible for everybody. But I think I have a pretty good sight, but they won't be visible for me when I sit in the sunlight. For example, alt text for images. A lot of people don't set these, but having an alt text, a good alt text describing what is visible in an image, makes a huge difference for people that use assistive technology. So accessible products are better products by default, and that's why I believe we should all invest in accessibility. To check if your product is accessible, you can tools that are out there. Microsoft and Google are pushing in their tooling landscape, for example, Lighthouse or WebHint, that give you technical information about what state your website has. And additional to that, there is the VCAG guidelines, which is a specification for what you have to do to build accessible stuff, and there are online checkouts for these too. But for accessibility, you always have to keep in mind that there can never be one tool that gives you all the hints, because very often things are not easy to figure out if something is accessible, and people have to check by themselves. So the guidance here is use the tools to get a quick overview, get a green score there, and then just test it yourself and look for certain use cases or certain people with certain disabilities if it's still usable for them. So I think we're on a good track here, and people care more about building good products that just work, and hopefully in the future everybody knows and cares about building accessible products.